Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, October 26th, 2020. I am Dave Biddle. I am very happy to be joined by Steve Helwagen. Steve, it's great to actually talk about an Ohio State football game, not looking ahead to if we're going to have a season or talking about this or that. We can actually talk about the Buckeyes beating Nebraska 52-17 in the season opener at the Horseshoe on Saturday. Just your overall thoughts about this game. We'll get into some specifics, but your overall thoughts on how you think the Buckeyes looked.
Yeah, Dave. I mean, when you think about it, it was the first game Ohio State's played in almost 11 months. I mean, that is, well, I guess maybe 10 months. I don't know. My math is a little off. But yeah, it was just fabulous to see Ohio State finally back out there on the field. Definitely a surreal situation as I'm driving into the game. As everybody knows, they always have the hospital exit on 315 is closed. I jumped off at the hospital exit. I drove straight up Keenan Drive. I parked in my spot and, no problem at all. It was like I was going to a scrimmage at Ohio Stadium back in the Trestle days or something. I mean, it was definitely weird. We're in the closed-in press box. They didn't even have the windows open. And so you really couldn't hear any noise out there. I mean, like none. You could hear a little bit of the music they were piping in at times, but no crowd noise. So it was a completely different and surreal situation. And in terms of the game, I thought it went about the way you would figure it would go. Nebraska gave Ohio State a tremendous fight for 1.5 quarters. But by the end of the second quarter, Ohio State's defense really dialed in, got some critical stops right before halftime. The offense was able to take advantage of some good field position once or twice. They got the field goal and the touchdown right before halftime and just really slammed the door. And, of course, Ohio State had the ball to start the second half, drove down and scored as everybody knew that they were going to. And then you had to believe the fumble recovery came next. And I think, the fumble return by Seven Banks made it 38-14. And the game was essentially over at that point. So I thought all things considered, I'd say an A- on offense and probably a B plus on defense. It just took them a quarter to get their bearings. And, I don't know if Ryan Day was serious with his explanations after the game about the running game and the defense, but it sounded plausible that, last year the running game didn't look very good in the opener against Florida Atlantic, and it came on after that. And that defensively it took them a quarter to adjust and diagnose what they were seeing. And, I had one of my top football people remark that Nebraska had kind of emptied all the trick plays and everything out at the beginning to get kind of a cheapy touchdown there at the beginning. But, you say that, but Ohio State's got to defend the play too. You got to set the edge. And that entire first series, they didn't set the edge. So, a lot of things that you can learn and teach from off that game.
Justin Fields was fantastic, unbelievable, even for his standards. 20 of 21 for 276 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also had 15 carries for 54 yards and a touchdown. In college football, that includes sacks. It was more like he had 11 carries for 70-some yards if you take away the sacks like they do in the NFL. But despite how great Justin Fields was, Steve, I think the story of the game was Haskell Garrett. I wasn't even sure if he was going to play. Less than 2 months from getting shot, had a through-and-through wound in his mouth through both cheeks, and he didn't just play. He's out there. He didn't get the start. Antoine Jackson did. That might be a one-game thing for Antoine Jackson because Haskell Garrett looked phenomenal as that 3-tech defensive tackle in there, just wrecking things up in there. That to me, that was the story of the game, and I almost can't believe I'm saying that considering how well Justin Fields played.
Yeah, I think Haskell Garrett being out there was a great lift, I think, for he and his teammates. And Kerry Coombs after the game said it was a miracle, and he said he went up and hugged him. And I think that's endemic. I mean, you think about the way they played the first quarter. The starters were Tyler Friday and Jonathan Cooper at defensive end. And then, as you mentioned, Antoine Jackson and Tommy Togi at defensive tackle. I think they got better when they went to the bench and put Haskell Garrett in. And for whatever reason, Zach Harrison, who everyone outside the program views as their number one defensive end. He was the fifth defensive end that got onto the field because I think Jean Baptiste and Tyreek Smith also got into the game before Zach Harrison did. And once Zach Harrison got in the game, I think that upped the level of pressure, even though he had one sack, but I think he helped, dial some things up. And I don't know if that was, again, they keep everything on such a tight leash over there right now. If perhaps he had been injured or something, was up why he didn't play. But they got better when they put Garrett and Harrison in the game in particular. Jerron Cage did some nice things inside too, but just an inspiring story for Haskell Garrett. I mean, he has the first sack of the season for Ohio State. And as you said, a guy whose life, could have, been ended tragically in that incident, his football career put in doubt. And there were questions, whether he was ready to go or not. Maybe that impacted the decision that he only played probably 20 plays, I would think, somewhere along that line for the game. But he made those plays count, no doubt about it. I've got a picture of him making another tackle in addition to the sack that he had. And the sack was at a critical time, obviously, as the Buckeyes were taking control of the game there late in the second quarter. So I agree with you 100%. And Kerry Coombs' comment was very poignant that he went up and gave Haskell Garrett a hug and called it essentially a miracle.
You mentioned the running backs earlier and just the running game in general. I mean, when Justin Fields wanted to run the ball, they could run the ball well, but there's no way you want to run him that much. That surprised me. Again, though, I mean, when it's going to be necessary, I guess they're going to do it, but you don't want to have to do that. And the running backs, their first 10 carries combined with Teague and Sermon, they got 20 yards, averaging 2 yards per carry. And sometimes that's just going to happen. You're going to get stuffed. But what I saw that is really discouraging is the lack of making the first guy miss and the lack of falling forward. When even the great running backs, even when they're getting tackled, are usually falling forward. Not everybody's going to get knocked back sometimes, even the best running backs. With Sermon especially, because we know what we have in Teague. Sermon, I had not studied his game that much. I expected more out of him. He doesn't break tackles and he doesn't fall forward. Now, it's one game, but he needs to do a better job of he gets first contact about a half yard short of that first down. You got to get that extra half yard after contact. The great backs will make the first guy miss, not just, get that extra half yard. You at least got to get that extra half yard. And a lot of times you got to make the first guy miss. Great running backs make the first guy miss. Didn't see that out of Trey Sermon. Small sample size, but was not impressed.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I think, again, what Coach said was last year against Florida Atlantic, J.K. Dobbins didn't look all that good because you're used to going against certain looks on defense from your own defense, and it's hard to replicate what an opponent is going to do. Obviously, they've played Nebraska a few times. They play Penn State every year, and that, of course, is the next opponent. So hopefully the familiarity there, they won't be maybe caught off guard by looks or whatever. You're talking about the running styles of the running backs. And this is what struck me is that Teague almost just seems very stiff, and he is not going to be nimble. He is not going to make somebody miss. He's going to take on the contact, and he is either going to go down there or he is going to maybe bounce off of a guy and maybe get another yard or two. But he is not a guy that is going to get up in the hole and then make some kind of Barry Sanders lateral, 4 feet to the right move to make some guy miss. He is I don't know that even Raymond Harris was this stiff. I mean, we talk about 4 yards in a cloud of dust. I mean, that is Master Teague. If you're in a short yardage situation or down near the goal line, he's the guy who's going to get the ball just because, he can maybe power it in. And he did have a couple touchdowns down near the goal line. Trey Sermon, to me, it took him about a quarter to get warmed up. He just didn't seem to have a whole lot going for him early. And then as things kind of loosened up, you saw a little bit more athleticism out of him. And he almost broke a big one. And I think a guy made a shoestring tackle on him over near the Nebraska sideline, and he pounded the ball like, damn, that was my chance right there. And so I'm not ready to give up on either of them just yet. I just think they're going to have their own niche and their own roles. And I hope what would make sense. I mean, somebody remarked that they gave it the sermon on like a 3rd and 1 and didn't get it. And it's like, yeah, that's where Master Teague needs to go into the game and take that play. You know, if you're going to run the running back, that's his play, not Trey Sermon's. And I think people came out on Twitter immediately and called that one out. Like, he's not your short yardage guy. I think that you can win with both of them. I think, you know, I want to see more, and I want to see more out of this offensive line too. And people were like, Steel Chambers needs to play. Steel Chambers got into the game later when it would pretty much, I don't know if it had already been decided or not. They were back on their own goal line and they gave it to him, which was kind of a tough spot if he turned it over there. But he did good. He showed good burst, 4 carries, 32 yards. And I think he gets an increased role as time goes on too. But you got to go with the guys you trust with ball security in a nut crunch type game like Penn State's going to be. And I think it's going to be Teague and Sermon. And I would agree with you on Fields. He doesn't need to be running the football 15 times a game. This is kind of like JT Barrett. He'll get 2 carries against Rutgers and Maryland, and then 28 against Michigan or whatever it was that one year. So again, a big game. So I don't mind Fields running it as long as he gets up and hands the ball to the official and goes back and can run the next play. That's all that matters. He's the meal ticket right now. Another thing, Dave, is if he's going to throw the ball as effectively as he can, you hope they back a guy out of the box eventually to make the running game a little bit easier. And those are situations they're going to have to read and diagnose as game goes on.
Yeah, with this passing offense, I mean, it looks unstoppable with Justin Fields and these receivers. And the offensive line didn't play their best game, as you mentioned, pass pro or run blocking, but they're still a great offensive line. And I'm not giving up on the running backs, to your point. I still think that tandem will be just fine with Steel Chambers maybe getting some more run as the number 3 back. I even thought Xavier Johnson looked good as the 4th string guy. But yeah, go ahead.
Just real quick, I thought 2 of the sacks were on Fields. I thought he held the ball way too long. I thought the one where the guy came on a delayed blitz and Myers just didn't pick him up, and he kind of squirted through later in the game. That was on the offensive line because he's got to pick that guy up. I mean, he wasn't even blocking anybody, and the linebacker squirted through and tackled the quarterback. But the other 2 were coverage sacks, in my opinion. Those were on Fields. He's got to throw the ball away or make a decision or step up or something. But yeah, that's my thought.
One of them, this is what I say about Fields. You know, a guy is great that even the plays he doesn't make are good plays. Like his one incompletion was almost a touchdown to Olave.
Yeah.
It was a well-thrown ball, maybe a little underthrown, but like, you know, he put it where only Olave could get it, and it was a good throw. Overall, I mean, was it perfect? No, but it was a good throw. And that was his only incompletion. And then on one of those sacks, you're right, one of them, he definitely held the ball too long. The other one, he almost got out of there. He made one guy miss, and he just kind of slid in the pocket. He was so smooth, and he got away from another guy. And then the third guy got him. It was like he made 2 guys miss in the pocket. You're like, my goodness. And even that play, they got him like by a shoestring and tripped him up for a sack. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, even when this kid like doesn't make the play, even when he does hold on to the ball, he still almost makes a play, and he still looks good doing it. He is incredible. I do want to ask you about the defense before we get to Penn State. Your overall thoughts on Kerry Coombs's, you know, I think you touched on this earlier. I think you hit on it. I think what happened was Nebraska had their set of plays that were going to work for maybe a half of football at most, a quarter and a half of football. Really, it was midway through the second quarter when Ohio State took control of this game. So Buckeyes are sitting there. It's 14-all. In the second quarter, but then they just went on a rampage after that. The defense only gave up 3 more points after that. They forced a couple turnovers. So you win the game 52-17. The Buckeyes were favored by like 27 or something like that. They win by 35. But your thoughts on how the defense played overall, Steve?
Well, you know, Nebraska had 217 yards rushing, which is about 120 more than Ohio State would normally like to give up, I think. Luke McCaffrey had the 47-yard run, and Adrian Martinez had a 39-yard run, the 2 quarterbacks. And McCaffrey's came on a handoff basically from Martinez kind of on a, I don't even know how you describe it, an end around, a counter. I don't know, but well blocked. I know that they blocked the outside linebacker and the defensive end perfectly. And I think it was Marcus Hooker whiffed on the tackle, and the kid was gone down the sideline until Browning was able to recover and run him down. To his credit, it only forestalled the touchdown one play, because on the next play, Martinez took a snap, and I don't think anybody even knew he had the football. I don't even know what that was. He just kind of rolled around right in, and nobody was out there. And I don't know. I think it took Kerry Coombs a quarter to kind of adapt and grow into this role, and Greg Madison. But once they got the bearings on what Nebraska was trying to do, I mean, I don't have the breakdown quarter by quarter on what the yardage was. I know that they had a couple good possessions, maybe in the second half. They had a 72-yard drive and were held to a field goal in the third quarter. The two touchdown drives were 75 and 78 yards. But otherwise, in the second half, they had about 160 yards, I think, in the second half, including that 72-yard drive for a field goal. That was a good second half, I thought. I want to see improved pressure. There was no pressure the first quarter and a half, and that allowed Nebraska to move the football pretty well. I mean, Martinez was 12 of 15, but he only threw for 105 yards. So they didn't get a lot in the passing game. Sean Wade, I thought, did a good job on Wan'Dale Robinson. He dropped a sure interception, but otherwise did pretty well. So I would give the front probably a B, the linebackers probably a B minus. Terrible first quarter and a half, but pretty good last 2.5 quarters. Secondary, I'd give almost an A minus. I thought they played really well on the whole. I don't know. Those were kind of my thoughts. That's kind of how I'd break it down. And I want to see more of the impact guys up front get more of the snaps. And I didn't feel that was the case this week. For whatever reason, Larry Johnson went with tried and true as opposed to guys with tremendous upside. And I think what we learned is guys with tremendous upside like Zach Harrison. And again, we have no idea if he missed half a camp, or we have no idea. I can't tell you why he was the fifth defensive end on the field, but my goodness, when he got in the game, he made a bit of a difference. So that's an example. Haskell Garrett's an example. Not sure what's going on with Teron Vincent. Need to get him going. So a lot of questions, and we didn't even touch on the young kids. That catch by Smith-Njigba was,
my goodness.
You're going to enjoy watching that kid play for 3 years. Oh, you got Garrett Wilson for another whole season next year too. He's a freak. He's unstoppable in the slot because you can't jam a guy in the slot. He gets a clean break and comes across the formation, and he's wide open. You can't run with him. You can't jam him, and you can't run with him.
And he catches everything, and he's super athletic. He can, he's got like a 42-inch vertical, and it looks like it's more than that. That kid's unbelievable. Olave's fantastic. And for those wondering about Olave's status, Ohio State's not going to tell us anything, but if we hear anything, we will let you guys know. But Ryan Day did seem optimistic after the game.
Yeah.
Chris Olave would be okay for Penn State. All right, let's finish the show talking about the border war, the other border war. Penn State looks at Ohio State as their biggest rival. I always point this out, and Ohio State does not reciprocate, of course. We know who Ohio State's rival is. But that always gets Penn State, I think, mentally ready for this game. They always come in and they play well against Ohio State. Now, it does hurt Penn State that there's no whiteout, there's no fans there. But Buckeyes favored by 11.5 last time I checked. What do you expect this Saturday in Happy Valley, Steve?
It was a whiteout. And they got their smoked. Well, Penn State, they had like 400 some yards to Indiana's like 200 last week, this past Saturday. They did everything that you would possibly do to win the game, except they had a bunch of turnovers. They had 10 penalties for 100 yards. You want to talk about shooting yourself in the foot? They did everything they could to blow that game. They had the game won. There was a screenshot on Twitter, 1:47 to go, first down at the 15-yard line going in, And all you had to do was take a knee 3 times. Indiana had a timeout, but just by taking a knee with 40 seconds in between plays, the second and third down plays, you can take the clock all the way down to at least 10 seconds. And if the quarterback dances around back there, you run the entire 147 out. They made the mistake of running the football and not telling the freshman running back to go down. The freshman running back saw this big hole, and he's been trained his entire life. Take that to the house. Well, he takes it in. Now, another mistake Penn State makes here is now you have a 7-point lead with 142 left. Now, you needed to go for 2 there, because if you go for 2 there and you make it 9, there's no way you have to kick the ball off. There's no way Indiana can win the game at that point. He goes for 1, kicks the extra point. Now it's 8. You've left the door open for Indiana to force overtime, which they did. And you left the door open to lose a game that you should have won. I mean, it came down to a call on the goal line, which honestly, you're split. It was the doggonedest closest call that I can ever recall, Dave.
Seriously,
I mean,
that was crazy. That was as close as it
tell
gets. Yeah.
if the ball had touched the ground or had broken the plane. It was almost simultaneous. And in that case, you say, well, the call on the field was good. Well, the play went so far to the sideline, and there's no room on that sideline. You didn't even see the official. Like, he had back clear up to the wall, and you couldn't even see the official on that side make a call, and everyone just assumed it was good. It was utter chaos. And Penn State put themselves in position to blow that game, and they blew it. And that's only on Penn State. Now, here's where Franklin has some motivating factors. Ohio State's beaten them 3 years in a row. 2 of those were by 1 point. And last year, they thought they were in the game in the third quarter in Ohio State. Justin Hilliard made a big interception at the end and helped preserve that win 28-17. If Penn State doesn't win this game, their entire purpose of working out from January to October of playing the season, it's over. They can't win the division. They are done. And there may not even be a bowl game for them to go to. A lot of the secondary bowl games are kind of peeling off because they're realizing there's no money in it if you can't have a crowd and blah, 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 blah. So their whole season is on the line. So, Ohio State fans may say, oh, Penn State lost. This will be an easy one. It's not going to be an easy one. It's probably going to go down to the wire, or at least go to the fourth quarter probably. Ohio State opened as a 10-point favorite, which I think is just crazy. And now they're like a 12-point favorite. Ohio State's got to play really well to cover a 12-point spread at Penn State, in my opinion. But, I mean, Penn State had over 400 yards offense, and Clifford had over 200 passing and over 100 rushing. So we just saw 2 quarterbacks run for 2 40-yard runs. So you tell me, guys. Tell me.
He had a couple terrible interceptions, though, too.
Yeah, I know.
I hear you, though. I mean, Penn State's going to be no pushover. That's for sure.
This must be the best Indiana team in 50 years, maybe. I don't know. It could be. They haven't won the Big Ten since 1967. So this might be the best Indiana team in decades. So we do have to give them – I mean, Penn State made mistakes, but Indiana all played an amazing game on defense, I thought, for 3 quarters too. So I don't know. We'll see.
I'm just glad we're talking Ohio State, Penn State. I mean, that's just, Ohio State, Nebraska was awesome.
Yeah.
Nebraska was kind of like the Buckeyes' friends, not kind of, like they were like best friends throughout this whole thing.
They were such good friends. He punched it in at the end. I think the punch in at the end was a receipt for the blows to the head. Oh, you're going to hit our guys high. I mean, the one was blatant. The guy headbutted the Ohio State runner. That was blatant. I just think that they put that on cruise control and said, well, if it gets in there, it gets in there. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And, you wouldn't ordinarily have done that, but I think that was a receipt for all the targeting penalties.
I think you could be onto something there. Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it. I don't think Coach Day needed to apologize, but he's a class act.
Yeah.
maybe that was a little gamesmanship.
I
both
think the
ways. Like,
apology
I'm going to
gives
try
him,
to score, but I'm also going to just give you an apology to make it.
I think the apology gives him cover for the what I think is more of the rationale that they're going to target our players when this game's out of control. Well, take that one with you.
I think you might be onto something there, Steve. Great stuff as always from Steve Helwagen. Thank you very much, Steve, and thank you to the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. Have a great day, Bucknutters.